Hello, dreamers. Melody Pash here, the Dream Diva. We're going to talk about fingers. Fingers are very important, and the positive about your fingers are going to be there are different attributes like to different fingers. Like there's a fivefold ministry that the Bible speaks of. So I'll share that with you. But also the positive of your fingers is going to be about discernment. It's kind of like if you're not looking at something, think braille, right? It's like I am discerning without my eye, right? I'm discerning by the Spirit, by my fingers, by the Spirit, right? I'm discerning. One of the fivefold ministry is also going to be what it represents. If you're looking at all five fingers, or you're looking at two or three or one of the fingers, this is the way the fivefold ministry is laid out. The thumb is going to be apostolic. That person is going to be a builder, a visionary. She's going to be building foundation. Now, the Bible talks about the foundation that the Bible and the prophet, right? Forefinger is the prophet, that those two build. So, in other words, the union of the apostolic and the prophetic. I'm not talking about a person. I'm talking about those gifts, right? Those offices. That union is going to, the word says, establish foundation for the rest of the body to stand upon. So it's like the apostolic and the prophetic, the apostle and the prophet, they build the foundation for the rest of the fivefold and the rest of the body of Christ to stand upon. Like the church is built upon that foundation. So your middle finger, it's the longest finger. That's your evangelist, the evangelist's finger. Your ring finger is going to be about covenant. That's the preacher. That's your preacher. And then pinky is going to be teacher, right? Not the same as preacher. Some preachers are really teachers, but they stand in a pulpit. Now, the preacher, that covenant finger is really about shepherding, right? It's going to be about shepherding. So, pastor or preacher needs to also be a shepherd. Teacher may be, you know, somebody who teaches itinerant, teaches like me online, but doesn't necessarily have a church, right? Now, evangelist, that can be any number of things. What does the evangelism look like that God has given you? How does that look? If he has given you a gift of evangelism, and think about this, guys, when Jesus was on the earth, was he an apostle? Was he a prophet? Was he an evangelist? Was he a shepherd? Was he a teacher? Yeah, he was all five. So you may or may not hold an office of one of the fivefold ministry, but the reality is the word says that greater things than what Jesus did in the earth we will do, because we carry that glory, right? The glory of God is not in a wooden box anymore called the Ark of the Covenant. The glory is in us. Kingdom is in us. The word says it's near to us. Yes, in us, right? It's right there. So Jesus operated in all of the fivefold, kind of like Paul said, I'm all things to all men. Whenever I need to influence, or if I can minister to a person and I need to shift gears to do that, that's what I'm going to do so that I can minister to all that God brings me, all that I encounter. So we can actually, as believers, operate in all of the fivefold ministry. You might be walking down the street and you might have been in your office operating as the apostle. Now, apostles also send people out. They help prepare, build foundation, they're visionaries, but they also, a true apostle is going to let people go. When they're ready, when they're seasoned, when they're matured by the preacher, teacher, and all of that, they're called in by the evangelist, and they've had prophetic utterance over them, and they know their destiny, and all of that, then the apostle's gonna now push them out into the world and say, go be who you're called to be. That's what Jesus did. He sent the disciples out, right? To disciple. That's what we're supposed to do, is disciple. And when we are prophetic and we help people with their destiny, then that sending people out in the fullness of, and blessing them out in the fullness of who they are and what they're created to be, is phenomenal. I love my job. Whether I'm operating in the apostolic, prophetic, evangelism, uh, pastor, or teacher, just know that you don't have to worry about having an office to operate in the fivefold. You are the fivefold. Jesus is in you. He is the fivefold, right? So you don't have to have an office to be everything that God has called you to. You just need to operate in Jesus, Jesus in you. That's what the word says. So the negative of fingers is going to be wrongful judgment, which is also often going to look like this. The prophet, an old time prophet, sometimes shaking a finger at you, or a prophet making predictions that are not necessarily from the heart of God. That does happen. That does happen. And also accusation. A lot of times you'll see the old finger come out, even from pulpits sometimes, where people are teaching, preaching, but they're operating out of filters that are not clean in their own life. And so they really are not effective in the fivefold because they don't really understand it. So they're judging rather than teaching, discipling, and helping people to step into their destiny and then pushing them out. We can't hold on to them either, right? The church can't hold on to everybody because, the word says we've got to go out into the world, right? If there's a harvest ripe to be had, then that's gonna require us going out, and that's what God has called us to do. I hope that helps with fingers. Lots of people ask questions about the fivefold and about fingers, so I hope that that's helpful.